All right, welcome everyone. My name is Marlon Evans. I'm the CEO here at NextCube. Thank you so much for taking the time to join our Future of EdTech panel and entrepreneurship roundtable. Really excited to have everybody, on the line. We have an exciting panel in store for you to really discuss some of the industry trends within EdTech that we think will really help for those of you that are interested in the sector. Maybe think about some ideas that you currently have, or maybe some ones that you haven't thought of previously. And then we'll transition to a roundtable with some amazing entrepreneurs who have been in this space, and they can give you a sense of their journey and how they were able to have success with their businesses. So you're in for a treat. We're really thankful to have one of the founding partners of the HBCU Founders Program, AT&T, to really serve as the catalyst for this event. When we were looking to build the program this summer, we were reaching out to some of our corporate partners, and right away when I sent a note to our friends at AT&T, they raised their hand and said, sign us up, count us in. This aligns with our overarching focus around impact and diversity. And within short order, we were able to form a partnership, which in the world of enterprise, as quickly as we were able to move, just I think was exemplifies AT&T's commitment to impact and diversity. And so to give us a little bit more of a sense of AT&T's initiatives around economic viability and community, we are honored to have Mylena Albright here, who leads community and social investment at AT&T. She also manages the philanthropic budget for AT&T's foundation's education initiatives. So with that, I'll pass the baton to Mylena.
Oh, thanks, Marlon. And I remember how quickly those conversations went, and it's really a true testament to the work that NextCube is doing. So thank you. And hi to everyone. I'm Mylena Albright, AVP in Corporate Social Responsibility at AT&T. And it's great to be here with you today. I don't think I have to tell you that we're in the midst of a critical movement for our country. And 2020 has been an incredibly challenging and painful year, especially for Black people in America. COVID-19 has uprooted our lives disproportionately and just impacted Black communities overall. We've seen unemployment for Black Americans reach 16.8% just in May, the highest it's been in more than a decade, and remains chronically high in many communities. Our society doesn't work if it doesn't work equitably for all. We know that there's much more that must be addressed when it comes to racial inequalities, such as education, healthcare, economic opportunities, and jobs. And at AT&T, we believe that technology has the power to better lives, improve the areas where we live and work, and drive societal change. I'd like to share some of our history of supporting economic empowerment. We've been engaged in civil rights since the 1960s, and while we're proud of the support and investments we've made, we know that we need to do more to contribute to the systemic change that we want to see. In the past 5 years, AT&T has contributed $215 million to increase education, skills building, and career readiness opportunities in Black and underserved communities. In July, AT&T committed an additional $10 million this year to create more economic opportunities and paths to success. Part of that commitment includes collaborating with organizations that cultivate Black talent through technology development and entrepreneurship, especially with HBCUs. Through the end of 2020, we'll invest $4.5 million to help put future generations on the path to career success. Among others, our work will support Youth Build USA, Jobs for America's Graduates, For Scholas, and Year Up. Perhaps some of you might have participated in these programs. We're also increasing our HBCU engagement. There are some specific important reasons why we want to enhance our support of HBCUs. For starters, it's critical that we increase diverse viewpoints to eliminate racial bias found in some of today's technologies. Our work with NextCubed is one way that AT&T is beginning to tackle this issue, specifically through the HBCU Founders Program that has brought us all here today. Together, we're committed to inspiring entrepreneurship and cultivating the next generation of changemakers within our country's HBCUs. We want to encourage students to design and surface business and technology concepts in digital health, finance, housing, and education sectors. Because we have had a long-term commitment to education, we've focused our work with NextCubed on the EdTech sector, which you'll hear more about shortly. Another reason for AT&T to continue to compete, we must always be looking for new methods of attracting top talent, and that means strengthening our commitment to HBCUs. It's important that our leaders remain engaged, that we are present on campuses when that's possible, and that we commit to helping enrich student experiences. We made an exciting announcement just last week at the virtual AfroTech conference, where Howard University's 421 team was crowned first place and winner of the AT&T HBCU Innovation Challenge, which came with a $50,000 prize. Their proposal was a concept for an AT&T 5G Academy, an app-based learning platform that allows high school students to earn points while learning about finance, marketing, computer science, engineering, and life skills. The points could then be redeemed for credit to purchase an AT&T 5G phone or AT&T 5G hotspot service. You might have heard about NextCubed and the Innovation Challenge if you virtually tuned in to the Revolt Summit this year. The Revolt Summit has been an impressive roster of talent, culture creators, and interactive classes that underscore the value of Black-owned businesses. It also puts resources towards initiatives that focus on fostering economic growth and innovations within the communities we serve. We also recruit talent through professional organizations like Society of Women Engineers, the National Society of Black Engineers, the National Black MBA Association, Management Leadership for Tomorrow, En-ROADS, and HBCU 2020 to bring in diverse professional hires. In conclusion, I'm just excited to see what the next year holds, especially as those of you who progress in the Founders Program develop your ideas and skills. We hope it further empowers you and your communities and helps us become a stronger, more inclusive company. And I'm excited to hear the discussions that we will hear today. To all the panelists, we are so grateful that you could share your entrepreneurial insights today, and proud that you all are AT&T Aspire Accelerator alumni. You will all bring an additional industry perspective to the wealth of knowledge that my colleagues Igor and Charles have in the EdTech space. Thank you all, especially to NextCubed for the discussion today. And now I'll turn this back over to Marlon for the discussions to commence. Marlon, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Marlena. It's just amazing as you listed all the many initiatives AT&T has ongoing. And as we think about this program for our founders and those who are on the line now, we have over 300 students from 60 HBCUs that are participating. And as we were sharing with them when we kicked off the program, entrepreneurship is just a great way to really learn about what they're passionate about, and in particular, what areas of business or careers that they may want to pursue. And for us, as we think about this program, it's as much about introducing these entrepreneurship skills as it is for the students and recent alums to get exposure to companies like AT&T for potential internships and other job opportunities. So as you're listening to this on the line here for our students and alums, keep that in mind as you're hearing about some of the different programs that AT&T is offering. With that, we'll transition over into our industry panel. I'd love to welcome up Tarika, Charles, and Igor to the floor. And while they're turning their cameras on and their microphones, just to give some context, and Marlena touched on this, I mean, we're obviously living in a pretty unbelievable time. COVID has forced all industries, not just education, to rethink how we're delivering products and services. And it could be said that no sector has endured more disruption than education. The students on the line now are experiencing that firsthand, and some of the growing pains that educational institutions are going through trying to adapt to this post-COVID world. But as we tell all of our companies, where there's pain, there's opportunity. And in the case of education, opportunity to create a really significant positive social impact by developing solutions that truly level the playing field for all students. And we've assembled a really great panel to help us understand what some of those market trends are within education, and opportunities to innovate. So I won't go into their amazing resumes and backgrounds. I encourage you to all go on LinkedIn and do some research on your own. But just kind of, quickly, just for contextual purposes, Igor is the AVP of Corporate Strategy at AT&T, with a focus on 5G product and innovation. Charles, also joining us from AT&T, is an area manager for external affairs, state legislative and regulatory affairs at AT&T. And Tarika Barrett is a chief operating officer at Girls Who Code, and she's also on the board of education publisher McGraw-Hill, which, incidentally, that's a big deal, folks. just so you know, that's a company that's been around for hundreds of years at this point. So really excited to have the three of them here on joining us on this panel. One thing I'll note, I have some questions that I have in mind that I think will really help surface some really great discussion, but please don't be shy to post your questions in the Q&A. We're actually going to be, if your question is asked during the webinar, we're going to be giving away a Donors Choose gift card. If you're not familiar with Donors Choose, they're actually one of the beneficiaries of AT&T's philanthropy. It's a really awesome nonprofit that allows you to support local teachers and schools in your neighborhood. So there's just a added incentive to post a question during the panel, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as possible. So just as an opening, and this is for everyone, we'd like to maybe start a little light here. Tell us something about yourself that we would not find on your resume or LinkedIn profile, and I'll go ahead and start with Charles.
All right, thanks a lot, Marlon. I'm very excited to be here today. That's trying to buy me a little bit of time to think. I love the question, and you put me in a tight spot because I try to do my best to keep my network aware of what I'm involved in with a very robust LinkedIn profile. But what's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I love to cook. This started out as a necessity, just trying to survive and put healthy stuff in my body. But what happened is, family members would come over in the middle of it, and they would be brave and curious about what I was doing in those pots and pans. And lo and behold, they tried them, and some of them were edible, right? So I kept at it, and they wanted to see what else I can do. So I've graduated from breakfast. I can do lunch now, and I'm not so bad at dinner, and I'm pretty good at reviving leftovers and making some fantastic creations. So I like to cook, but you're not going to see that on LinkedIn.
Good to know. I'll keep that in mind next time we're hanging out. Igor.
Absolutely. Great to be here. Thank you. I did update my LinkedIn as well, like Charles did. I didn't want to, look bad today. But I think maybe one thing that's not in there, as somebody who started their career in management consulting straight out of college, I was able to serve many clients over the years, maybe dozens of different companies. And at AT&T, I have been managing our B2B products, where I had to engage with clients as well. I had a lot of work done in the transportation industry, where we would actually understand, how companies in, say, garbage collection or direct store delivery operate. I was able to even ride in a garbage truck to understand how things work at every stop. And that gives you a bit of an external perspective. So I'm glad I had that experience, and I would put it on LinkedIn if I could.
Nice. Thanks, Igor. Tarika.
Thank you, Marlon. And I'll echo everyone else and say I'm really, really happy to be here and really grateful for AT&T and their amazing partnership. Because of AT&T, we've been able to serve so many girls. So thank you. In terms of what's not on my LinkedIn profile, a little bit in Charles's vein, I will say that I am, it's also kind of the cooking, party planning, party throwing. And I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so typically we do these blow up parties where the decoration is super intense. We'll, go down to the cake pop creation level and, recreate things that at one point I did a Minecraft cake in a cube with all manner of fondant creations that were on top. So that is definitely not on my LinkedIn, but something that is, I wish I could share more of.
Fantastic. Well, maybe even staying with you, Tariq, as we kind of think about, you mentioned having an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. So you're witnessing firsthand kind of the transition that they're going through in their classroom with classes being on Zoom, and maybe they're trying to figure out how they can stay up to speed and not lose or fall back in terms of their education. What changes are you seeing now within the educational system that you think are going to be, here to stay in a post kind of COVID world, as well, or maybe it surfaced some areas where there's still a lot of room for improvement?
Yeah, Marlon, that's a great question. I think that, COVID has forced us to make a set of changes that we never anticipated. It's been, great for a lot of organizations that have been pushing blended learning, but haven't made inroads. Now everyone is on Zoom, including my kids. And it has really kind of catapulted this work. We know that some of this is here to stay. Education is not going to look the same based on what's happening right now. But I can talk a little bit of, about what we've been able to do at Girls Who Code. Because of COVID, Girls Who Code had to pivot our programs to go fully virtual in a matter of weeks. So in under 3 months, we designed and deployed 3 new programs to serve our girls. And as a result of these changes, we were able to reach even more girls, actually 5,000 through our virtual programming this year. That's probably more than we'll actually reach in person. And the data show that our virtual programs were as effective as in-person programs, and that includes outcomes for our Black, Latinx, and low-income students. So, virtual is here to stay in one form or another. But I think something that I'm mindful of as a parent and as an educator is that we need to think about how to make sure that virtual is actually equitable. How are we teaching students who might not have stable Wi-Fi, who might be caregivers, who might have a second job as an essential worker? In this regard, we know we have to do better, but what does that look like in this new virtual context?
No, thank you. I don't know, Igor, from your perspective, what are, obviously there's Zoom, there's maybe schools that are using IoT to monitor experiments. Like, whereas as these students are thinking about launching, businesses, how can they align what they're thinking about with where the industry is headed?
Yeah, I think I have some students as well in my household. So I've observed the transition in March to remote learning. And I would say I agree with Tarika that we've reached a point where now we can see remote learning sort of at par with where we were kind of in-person learning, perhaps, mostly at par. There is still some gaps in basic connectivity, devices, applications, and content. But I think our aspiration should be, go beyond where we were in-person learning, because in-person it wasn't perfect, and we just kind of replicating that in an online environment. We should do better than that. The technology affords a more immersive environment. It affords perhaps going broader and giving these tools to people who perhaps were not ready to receive them, but give the tools kind of in a different way. So we could achieve better outcomes than even what we had with in-person learning before.
Fantastic. Charles, anything to add?
So I think what's here to stay is this sense of disruption in the traditional model of education delivery. Learning is it's not a one size fits all type of experience. And as EdTech companies continue the trend of customizing the modality of instruction around the preferences and interests of the learner, I think we can expect to see better and maybe even unexpected outcomes. The definition of a learning outcome, I think, has been traditionally understood in the framework of a test score, a degree, a certificate, et cetera. And while that has stayed the same, the definition of the workplace is changing. And it's evolved from office buildings, I mean, as we know now, to home offices, right? And so who knows what it will be next? And so I think the connective element between students and workers and wages and skills, I think that will begin to refine more and more over time. And, as a country, we still have a gap to close around skilled labor, right? We focus a lot on STEM, but there's not a separation between skilled labor and technology, and there's a perception that there is. So when technology, education, and skilled trades just edge a little closer together, I think we'll see, another revolution in education where kids, and all levels of learners, continuing learners too, aren't looking at what they're being trained on as why am I learning this, but how can I get more involved in what I'm doing through technology?
Yeah. No, you raise a lot of good points, and one definitely I want to circle back on, which is the future of work, in how our students now can be preparing themselves for the jobs of tomorrow. So that I'll want to circle back there, but also, Igor, you kind of mentioned, a little bit about kind of advances within technology, and some of this has been somewhat forced upon us due to COVID, but I still think we're just scratching the surface when it comes to personalized learning, using things like artificial intelligence, immersive learning through virtual reality or AR. And now with the connectivity advances with 5G, a lot of that can come to life, at the school site. How do you think all of those kind of trends coming together is going to impact student outcomes?
I think the goal would be to go in student outcomes, in student performance beyond where we are today and in a measurable way. But how to accomplish that is not completely clear yet. That's why I think we have a lot of entrepreneurs here, a lot of innovators trying to figure out what exactly is the problem and what the solution might be. Just simply, trying to push technology into a bad process will not result in a better outcome. So you would think that you want to first focus on accessibility and getting a good connectivity out to the learners as well as teachers and kind of creators in a way that they can actually use. The cost is one issue. The other issue is that the technology has to be kind of compliant with the use case. When you give a lot of devices with connectivity to students in high school or elementary school, you want to make sure it's controlled and managed by perhaps the schools themselves. So that issue has not been fully solved, but we're kind of getting there. But when it comes to the actual learning experience, you mentioned immersive, mentioned engaging. How do you make that happen? Augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and some of the other buzzwords definitely are real, becoming real, but how to apply it to education specifically is not yet solved. So that's why we have these challenges, we have these competitions, we have these webinars, frankly, to kind of spark that imagination and see where we get to. 5G will play a role, much the same way as with 4G. When we created it, that connectivity, we didn't know how it would be used. We didn't know that Uber and Lyft will be created. We didn't know you could watch videos, all day long on wireless networks. So much the same here. We think AR and ML and AI will play a role, plus connectivity with low latency. But how exactly? It's really up to you guys to go figure out.
Well, and that's what we're really, driving towards, is we want to, for the students and alums listening on the line, recognizing that there is the infrastructure there, the technology is there, but to Igor, to your point, how it's being applied in innovative ways to impact learning, we're really just scratching the surface. And for those of you who are, thinking about launching businesses within education, I hope you're really leaning into the fact that there we don't have all of the solutions yet, and we need folks like yourself that are living it on a day-to-day basis, coming up with some of these solutions and how the best way to apply these technologies to education. And so with that, maybe we'll transition from the high level to more tactical. I'll go to you first, Tarika. If you were starting an EdTech business, today, who would be your target customer initially? Would you go after students, teachers, schools, corporates, and why?
That's a great question, Marlon, and I love that you called it tactical. I think for us, I would say our target consumer would be students. And that's because, where students go, parents and teachers and corporates follow. I look at an example right now. I was on a panel this past week with the founder and CEO of OutSchool. And it's this platform that I'm sure folks, listening are nodding their heads, where they have all these cool classes and, very much about a love of learning, and kids get to pick and seek it out. And, there's a tremendous amount of venture capital going into, educational opportunities like this that are leveraging technology that are super engaging. And, our kids are our leaders, and in so many ways, if what we're building resonates with them, then it can scale up to customers beyond them. And I think about something like OutSchool that is amazing, but let's be honest, a lot of kids will not have access to OutSchool. How do we think about those opportunities that are going to hook, the kids who are traditionally left behind? So again, I would start with students, engaging them and then taking it from there.
Charles, how about you? You're starting a business tomorrow. Would your target customer be students, or would you go to enterprise? Where would you start?
I think the students stand to benefit the most from the availability of the connectivity. When parents have digital literacy at their fingertips, I think it puts students in a position to be more active consumers of educational opportunities online. This past weekend at Apnt, we opened up a computer lab at a low-income apartment complex in Houston, Texas. It was Brookdale Village apartment complex. And we put a computer lab in there in the middle of an apartment where most of the units did not have an internet connection. I mean, that's a game changer. And so if I was starting a business today, I would be focused on making sure that parents had an affordable option for internet connectivity, such as access from AT&T. And it's not a plug, it's just to say you have to make technology accessible before we can even expect any improvement in outcomes. We talk about communities that are traditionally underserved. One day those communities aren't going to be traditionally underserved. One day that's going to be an outlier. And it starts by expanding network connectivity, increasing the literacy, reading rates, among low-income groups, and then increasing the access to technology. You put literacy and technology in the hands of the parents pass down whatever they know, good or bad, to their students, to their learners in the household. And so if you put technology in their hands, they're going to do something great with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Igor, your thoughts on that?
I had a bit of time to think about it while Charles and Tarika were talking. So I think you're asking a very classical question. Do you go B2C or B2B, or is it something in between? And I think with education in particular, so important to understand the needs of that B2C sort of user, of the student as well as the parent, and try to solve an actual problem. So many startups try to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And by the way, there is even not a solution to it. So you wouldn't want to go there. You want to find the real problem. And oftentimes you can see that understand the problem by observing, as Charles was saying, in a very detailed manner based on market research, observation, or some other way to understand what is the actual problem at kind of a user experience level. But when it comes to actually making a business out of it, there's a lot of research out there showing that B2C startups don't survive as much as B2B startups. The rate of sort of failure or success is dramatically different, where B2B has double the success rate of B2C. That tells you something. You want to find customers among schools or corporates, those that will be able to pay for it and kind of fund the business. And it's a lot easier sometimes to understand their buying factors. There is fewer of them. You can actually go talk to them. And so my advice will be to understand the B2C part in detail, understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve, but then go try to find the customers that are paying in the B2B side.
No, we're seeing that, as well as we think about our investment thesis within education, that B2C going that route in particular, trying to kind of build up a large kind of consumer base is very, very expensive, as it may be a more straighter path is going to the B2B route. So that's just something to kind of to keep in mind for the students and alums on the line, as you'll start hearing things like total addressable market and TAM, SAM, SOM, and you're wanting to figure out what your serviceable, obtainable market is right out of the gate. You may want to think about enterprise as a way to get started, but that is for a much longer discussion. But I thought it would be helpful for some of the students to hear how the panel was thinking about the space at writ large. And maybe one last question before we open it up to the group. Again, getting really tactical around those students who are getting ready to launch a business. What piece of advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's heading down this path? I know we've talked about this a little bit already in terms of are you going B2B or B2C? Where do you start? But any other kind of tidbits that would be really helpful to the students as they start thinking about launching a business? And maybe we'll start with Charles first.
So I love this question. I was itching to jump into the conversation with Igor, because we sit across from each other when we were in person. But again, that's for another time. But advice I would give, start with a problem that you wish you had a solution to earlier. Sometimes just in the space that I'm in, we know that a city and the purchases that they make are controlled by tax revenue, right? And cities always have a problem with budgets. And if you're trying to put a solution into a school system, that is a problem that you will consistently run into. And it's a really tough problem to solve, because a lot of the factors in the equation of solving that problem are outside of your control. And so my advice would be remove the limitation from your imagination. When you're imagining a solution and you're thinking about the people that you want to benefit, of course you want access to capital, you want to be able to scale, and you want market share. That's going to come when you have solved a problem for people that hasn't been solved before. It's going to come when you don't try to slay the age-old giant, but you try to make a solution for a small group of people that another group of people might find interesting. So I would say stay very true to your core of why you want to start a business, who you want to impact, and how you want to impact them, and you'll get supporters. That capital will come along with your successful outcomes.
No, that's amazing advice. One thing I would just tag onto that, we share with a lot of our entrepreneurs to be married to the problem and not the solution. So if you're really passionate about the problem, but you can detach yourself from what has to be solved in this particular way, that will allow you to innovate and really come up with the best solution, not necessarily only the one that you came up with initially. Igor, your piece of advice for the group.
I would say that to be successful, it has to be a team sport. Like, we're talking about an environment where it has to be something that, technology enabled and applied to a specific vertical like EdTech, where there's a pretty deep sort of history and, a lot of sort of subject matter that perhaps not everybody fully understands. You want to address the kind of the user needs at the detailed level. So there has to be a team. You can't do it alone. So you have to find like-minded people to start this. They may not be full-time, workers. They could be sort of advisors or colleagues or partners, but very much a team sport, and requires kind of cross-functional sort of thinking. It's no longer just a one idea that gets you there.
Absolutely, and I hope everybody on the line considers NextCube a part of their team. And in addition to us providing you with support as you're thinking about your businesses, really take advantage of the other students that are participating in the program. We're already seeing a lot of that over Slack and getting ideas and forming teams. Definitely keep that going, because to Igor's point, being able to kind of rally other folks around your idea and your potential solution is kind of the first step in being able to launch your company. If you can get some of your peers to come along board as a part of that process. Tarika, your golden nugget of advice.
Thank you. I definitely, what the other folks have shared is really, really powerful. And I guess I'll build on something that Charles said earlier. I think that for folks, listening in, keep an eye on equity and accessibility. If you think about it, you're the stewards of the future of, EdTech. And if we make sure that we're giving all our kids equal opportunities to thrive, that's a huge piece of it. And I feel it connects a little bit to some of what Charles was saying about what it is you're trying to do, what you're passionate about, and what you're trying to solve. I think please think about equity and access, because very often a lot of the ed tech solutions are thinking about communities that are quote unquote traditionally served. And the folks who've been left behind traditionally are an afterthought. And so, just really encouraging folks to think about that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to now turn it over to some of the questions that we're getting through the Q&A, and keep them coming. This is awesome. I'm going to start with Alicia. My daughter is Elise, so I'll start with Alicia. And this is for any of you to chime in. She asked, how were you able to educate yourselves thus far beyond traditional schooling? And would you say self-paced learning is a better option in your opinion? So to me, this really speaks to kind of this idea that education doesn't stop after you've graduated from university, and kind of continuous learning, and really encouraging people to be lifelong learners, which I think is also a business opportunity, because we know that folks are going to be transitioning from jobs on a more regular basis than been done in the past. So open up to any one of the panelists to take that one on.
Let me jump right in since I jumped off of mute first. So my first education after high school was in the U.S. Navy. They tried to give us in our training phase, in our indoctrination, they tried to give us the most limited amount of resources to solve problems that needed a lot of resources to be solved. That trained me to take a look at what I had available and make something happen with that, right? So when you look at a problem, resources aren't always available. What do you do? What do you do when you don't have the resources? What do you do when you need more than you have? I had to, maybe like some of you online, I had to go to school while caring for a younger sister and a mother who was unemployed at the time. And so what I did to learn was I shadowed folks who were working in the same jobs that I was in, or working in the same office place. I asked questions. I did informational interviews that might not have been part of a job application, but it helped me to get a little bit closer to knowledge and information that would help me make the next step up. Sometimes I needed a different level of income, and so I went after a job that wasn't necessarily along my career path, but it was going to give me some experience and some exposure that was going to help me just put it in my toolkit, put it in my bag, and along the way I was able to pull from that bag with the next experience. So I would say it's great to be an autodidact. Nobody's going to ever stop you from reading or checking out videos online. There is no format for creating the way that you want to learn. Don't try to fit your curiosity in a program that's available for purchase.
Whoa, that's tough to follow, Charles. Tough to follow. So maybe we'll move to another question. Well said. Well said. So Lisa, you'll be getting a donors choose gift card because your question was asked. So we'll be following up after the webinar. But thank you for asking that question. I'll go to Georgiana's question now. She says, I'm interested in creating a tech solution to bridge more kind of disengaged parents, either distanced by divorce or travel, to connect with teachers. One of my biggest concerns is wondering how to connect with teachers outside of my network without really, breaching on their time. Maybe Tarika, this would be one that you could, based on your experience at Girls Who Code.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. And what a cool project to think about disengaged parents. I would say that, I also used to work at the New York City Department of Education, and I was a teacher myself. In this moment, I think one of the biggest obstacles is just how intensely strained teachers are in this moment and how much they're grappling to just try to manage what's in front of them. In this moment. But at the same time, my understanding is that teachers are desperate for resources that work and ways that they can build community, especially, for their students. My daughter is a part of an affinity group at her school. I didn't even know that they had affinity groups. She's at a new middle school, but it seems like a really powerful opportunity and moment. I think that there's some tangible ways, and certainly I can share my email. There are natural, the easiest place I find are Facebook groups for folks, teachers who are looking to engage on that level. It's very hard to get lists of teacher emails. Sometimes that's a little bit of a tricky situation, but every school has sort of points of contact. And if you're looking to do something, I don't know where you are in the development of your project. If you're looking for focus groups to be able to run things by teachers and get opinions, that's a little bit different than wanting to roll out a full-fledged project. So it really depends on your need. And if you're trying to get perspective from public school and district level professionals, or if you're trying to kind of go, to charters or try to go to private schools. So I think just narrowing down what questions you're trying to answer, what you would want of these teachers, and then have a game plan for how you'd want to engage them. Because again, teachers have extremely limited time based on how much they're trying to do both for students and for parents. And so that's at least the initial thinking that I have about that.
Wonderful. And so Georgiana, you'll be getting a Donors Choose gift card as well. And we'll just have time for one more because I really want to get to the Entrepreneur Roundtable, and maybe Candace will be facilitating that, can capture some of these questions as well. But I'll put this one on you, Igor. This is from Purnell at FAMU. Given that education is often budget restricted with not much leeway to lower level employees to buy or try solutions, how do you suggest breaking into institutions or systems to get first customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is so much fragmentation in the industry where unless you invent something completely unique and different, you'll be competing with dozens that are trying to solve the same problem, maybe not in the same way. In addition to the fact that the customers, such as educational institutions, may be budget constrained, and even when they're not constrained on the budget, they have a process for procurement. If you are targeting that segment, that is typically starting with a request for proposal, RFP. So getting something in the hands of customers would have many barriers, whether it's competition, or the process or simply the budget. So, I mean, the tried and true method is, free trials, structuring a product in a way that has a, free tier. I'm not necessarily a big fan of, a free trial for just everybody as a standard thing in the B2B space. But as you're launching, that would be sort of one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to create, somewhat of a, collaborative environment where it's kind of co-creation, where those early customers will be invited to contribute, something in return for, use, or they kind of being a launch partner there. That will give them more of an engagement and actually will help you as well to create a product that's better than the competition.
Awesome. Thank you, Igor. And with that, I hate to break up the conversation. I feel like we could go on all evening, but just want to thank, starting with Milena, but also Charles and Tarika and Igor for joining the webinar. Maybe if we could light up the chat with thank yous from everybody, across the webinar for your participation. But really appreciate it. I know you're all very busy, so thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to transition to the Entrepreneur Roundtable. Really excited to bring up Candace Blacknall, who I think ultimately in the end, I'm going to be working for her at some point in the not too distant future. She's is going to be moderating the roundtable. She's currently at the Morehouse School of Medicine. She's launched an EdTech platform for medical students. So she is absolutely crushing it, and really excited for her to facilitate the next part of this session and bring up our entrepreneurs. So with that, I will pass the baton to Candace.
All righty. Thank you so much, Marlon. I truly appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to be here, and I have the distinct honor of continuing all of this inspiration that I know we're all feeling. As Marlon mentioned, I'm Candace Blacknall. I'm an MD MBA at Morehouse School of Medicine and also Georgia Tech Schiller College of Business. And I'm the CEO and co-founder of GABA, which is a platform that uses machine learning to match medical trainees to study tools in schools. So I am very excited to continue, yes, pulling questions from the chat, so keep those coming. But also introduce three individuals who are absolutely killing it in the EdTech space and really paving the way for our future learners. So with that, I would love to invite our three panelists to turn on their video. Tony, Khalil, and Edna, join us with your wonderful faces and share your story. As I mentioned, keep those questions coming, and I would love to introduce our panelists, but honestly, I couldn't do them justice. They're just that dynamic. So I want to invite our panelists to go ahead and introduce yourself, starting with Tony.
Hey there, can you all hear me? It's saying I can't turn my video on because there we go. Cool.
I can hear you.
Ooh, there we go.
Wow, look at your background.
Am I visible now? Nice.
Yes.
Okay, cool. How's it going? My name is Tony Weaver Jr. I am CEO, founder, and weirdo-in-chief at Weird Enough Productions. We're an EdTech organization that uses superheroes and comic books for literacy and social emotional learning. So we create diverse, original comic book stories and partner them with lesson plans, curricula, activities, and projects that help students become better people both inside and outside of the classroom. We put it all on a technology platform that we license out to schools, after-school programs, community centers, grandparents. Recently got a couple of grandparents on board. So yeah, if you, any person that wants to support a young person to become the hero that they know they can be, we try to put those resources in their hands.
Awesome. Let's see, Edna.
Hey everybody, my name is Edna Martinson. I am the co-founder of Bottle Learning. We're a gamified education platform that makes learning fun and personalized for kids in kindergarten through 6th grade. Our focus really is on identifying and addressing the learning gaps that students have in these age ranges, catching those learning gaps early so that we can get them all on grade level as they progress to middle school, high school, and beyond, and really helping teachers with the tools to better facilitate learning.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome. And then Khalil.
Hey everyone, really good to be here today. So I'm Khalil Fuller. I am currently the founder and CEO of a nonprofit called Gift Card Bank. And so we work, we kind of aggregate gift cards and through partnerships with grocery stores, retailers, merchants, et cetera. And then we distribute those gift cards on a digital platform that we created to low-income people in need. But the main reason why I'm here is because I was the founder and CEO of an organization called Learn Fresh. And our first product that we're most known for is NBA Math Hoops, which is a fun math curriculum for elementary and middle school students. So we partnered with the NBA and made an engaging math curriculum that kind of is centered around the statistics and celebrity and excitement of basketball. And so I ran that company for 8 years. I'm now on the board of it and still going strong. So really pleased to be here and excited to share with y'all today.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you all for being here and sharing your time. I know for me as a founder, one thing that's always helpful is hearing other founders' entrepreneurial journey. So why don't we kick off the conversation today with each of you sharing your entrepreneurial journey and specifically answering the question, did you have any entrepreneurial endeavors while you were in college? Let's mix it up. So let's go backwards. Khalil.
Sure. Entrepreneurial endeavors in college, yes. So I mean, I started Learn Fresh when I was in college, but let me actually to share the story. I'll go further back in time than that. So I grew up in LA. Grew up in what the world would classify as a pretty low income family. So my family struggled with intermittent homelessness off and on when I was quite young, but just had amazing parents that did everything they possibly could to provide opportunities for me. Best example of that I like to give is that my mom took out loans for me to go to preschool that she didn't finish paying off until my senior year of college.
Wow.
Just above and beyond dedication, right? And so I've always had this kind of bone in my body to both go as far as I can with that education and jump on every opportunity that's provided for me, but also to create opportunities for others. And so when I was in high school, my two best friends both ended up dropping out because they fell far behind, specifically in math. And so I started tutoring kids and realized that I didn't have any tools or resources at my disposal to make the math fun, to make it engaging, to make it culturally relevant, to make it come alive. And when I was in high school in LA, the thing that mattered most in life were the Lakers, and Kobe Bryant was a god. And so I started to think, wow, there's a lot of really great math in the sport of basketball. What if we could just peel back a couple of layers and expose that to kids? And so my freshman year in undergrad, I ended up starting this organization called Learn Fresh that I mentioned. And so we built this game that really kind of felt like a basketball game. It was like a basketball board game it started with. Now it's a lot of tech based, but it started as this board game where I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but fundamentally you do math while you're going through what actually feels like a basketball game. And so we took this idea eventually all the way to the NBA, received the first ever royalty-free license in the history of the NBA. I'm skipping over a bunch of bumps and all that and a long time, right?
We'll get there.
But we were able to partner with the NBA and then Hasbro, the board game company. And so then it was kind of a, just consistent growth from city to city. And now NBA Math Hoops is being used in 40 cities across the country. And we just passed 250,000 students reached mark a couple months ago. And so again, ran it for 7 years. It was an ordeal. I feel like I lived an entrepreneurial lifetime in that time period, but that's kind of how I got started. And so I pulled double duty when I was in undergrad working on my company. And so for the students out there, I feel you.
Awesome. Edna, you want to go next?
Yeah, so a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Ghana, West Africa. I grew up there, did high school there. I was about 15 years old in high school, and my brother had just moved to America. And so I'm like, I want to go to America too. And so I started doing these SAT classes to take the SATs. And my parents said, hey, if you do really well on that, you could just skip the other part of high school and go join your brother. And there's a way to do that. And so I started working on that. And then I ended up tutoring at the SAT Center and helping other students out as well. So that was kind of like my first big jump into, hey, I can start a tutoring thing and help others get to go to America as well. And then so I moved here when I was 16. I did college, and pretty traditional college. I got my degree in international business. And I think once I went to grad school, starting to be more around other people that were, that had that entrepreneurial spirit, and all the resources that were available. They're probably available in undergrad. I just wasn't paying attention. But grad school, I was like, okay, entrepreneurship class, like there's venture creation challenge, all these things that started to pique my interest. And that's when I was really like, wow, I can, fully jump into this. So that's kind of like my journey into getting into entrepreneurship, if you will.
Awesome. Tony.
Cool. I'm very similar to Khalil. Started my company while I was in college. I went to Elon University in North Carolina, where I believe a certain other person went as well. Yeah, what's up, Elon? Strong. So I popped up on Elon's campus during my freshman year, and you couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to be the next Denzel Washington. Like that was what I showed up for. Elon accepts 16 acting majors a year. I got accepted into the acting program. I was the only Black male acting major in the whole program. And in addition to that, as I was getting ready for that, my mom pulled up on me and was like, listen, here's the move. Either you're going to minor in theater or you're going to double major in something else, because I'm not paying all of this money for an acting degree. And I was like, Mom, why don't you believe in me? I don't understand. And my mom was like, I do believe in you. I believe in you so much that I think you can get 2 degrees at the same time.
All right.
So pick another major. So I double majored in acting and strategic communications with this idea that if I wanted to break into the industry, I could use the communications background in order to like work some publicist stuff, some online social media type stuff, and create a name for myself. However, instead what happened is that I ended up in my communications classes and I learned about something called cultivation theory, which is essentially the idea that the more a person engages with media content, the more they believe the world around them is like the world that they see on TV. And I got really, really passionate about this idea, about media portrayals and how they impact the way that people see each other. At the time, I was volunteering through one of my classes. I was volunteering at a local elementary school where I was mentoring a Black male 4th grade student who was pretty much cultivation theory incarnate. A huge nerd, loved to talk to me about cartoons and everything like that. We were supposed to be talking about other things. But when Halloween popped up and it was time for him to tell me who he wanted to dress as for Halloween, he couldn't think of any characters that looked like him for him to actually dress as. The character that he could think of was CJ, one of the main characters of Grand Theft Auto, which not even the new Grand Theft Auto, an older Grand Theft Auto. I was like, how'd you even get, who gave a 4th grader that game? But that engagement with that student had a really profound impact on me because it made me think back to my experiences with mental health, growing up, dealing with racism from my teachers and my peers, and dealing with bullying to the point where when I was in middle school, I actually attempted to end my own life. So my experience with that student taught me the problem that I dealt with that I thought was an individual Tony problem is actually a problem that a lot of young people are dealing with. As I did my research, I found that it was actually an institutional issue, and that youth mental health, social emotional wellness, as well as digital literacy, media literacy are huge issues that need to be addressed. And it was kind of that moment that I thought, well, when I was in my dark place, the thing that helped me the most was comics, manga, anime, video games. What if we could leverage these same mediums that help me, that young people are already engaged with, to help them become the people that we know they can be? That was kind of my awakening moment. I am still going to be the next Denzel Washington. Let's just put that out there. That's still happening, but this is where I'm at right now.
Baby steps.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Thank you so much for that. That's really powerful. All right, so Khalil, you totally alluded to this. Of course, the entrepreneurial journey is like loaded with challenges and surprises. We're gonna cut straight through the middle just to mix it up. Edna, for the next question, what challenges and surprises have you faced as an EdTech entrepreneur?
Oh man, where do I start on this one? It's definitely just a lot, throughout the journey. I would say starting off, just making sure you have a good core team. Sometimes when you're starting off, thinking about bringing on the right people so you don't bring on the wrong people who don't fully believe in the vision and where you're going with the company, or people that just want to come and, you know, take advantage of the high moment that you might be in if you've just, you know, raised funding or whatever it might be. So building the team definitely was something that we paid close attention to. And a previous startup that we had, I think that was like the number one issue, you know, bringing on people who maybe had all the right credentials, went to the Ivy League school and stuff, but it really wasn't the best fit for the company. And so once we started Bottle, we're like, we're bringing on the people that have the passion, that, you know, same core values in, you know, believing in education and what we can do in the space, and just the drive. So I would say, you know, just overcoming the team challenges is one thing that I would advise entrepreneurs to do early, and always think about it as you grow as well and as you continue to build your team.
Yeah,
I'll be totally transparent. Most surprising thing about EdTech in general, the best product does not always win, period. Very often we are told to invest in our team, invest in our product, make sure that you're offering the most competitive thing. But honestly, the incumbent effect is real. And 9 times out of 10, sometimes your product can be amazing, but you just didn't happen to spend $6,000 for a sponsored ISTE session last year. So they don't know who you are. Literally, that's the only thing that's different. It's not that your product's bad. It's that you didn't stumble into this happy hour at NCTE and happen to run into the curriculum director for X school district. Literally the only difference. I think that was the thing that was most surprising for me, but in a way that made me feel empowered in the sense that this industry is partially about product offering, but it's also about relationships. And I feel like relationship building, establishing connections with people is something that I excel at. I'm a non-technical founder. My CTO is from Ghana. We met in college. He's chill and prefers to hang out and code at all times. So he can do that. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do while you're doing that? I feel like I'm backing out. But majority of the growth in this industry and in this sector is legitimately relationship driven. And that was surprising for me at first.
True.
Yeah. Plus one to both of those points, for sure. I think one other thing that's specifically education related or ed tech related is just the cyclical nature of the school year, right? Like all of our friends who are starting consumer tech companies, they can get a cohort of users with a crappy product, and then they can get another cohort of users in the next week, the next month, whatever. Depending on how you're kind of tackling the go to market, you might have one shot per school year, right? Mm-hmm. And so getting those timelines right and understanding, okay, well, if we want to get started in September, the school district's actually making their decision in March or April. That means we need to start building the relationship in November, December, maybe, right? And so like understanding both the timeline that it takes to build those relationships that are really important, and also the fact that you need to, planning your product roadmap in such a way that you're getting things to the right place where you can test them and get the data that you need before that next cycle is kind of ready to repeat itself is something that took me a couple of cycles to understand, right?
Yeah, for sure. What has been your experience as an underrepresented founder in EdTech?
So I'll go first on this one. My experience as an underrepresented founder in EdTech is a little different than most because even though I'm an underrepresented founder, I'm from Atlanta. There's nothing underrepresented about being Black in Atlanta. Not only am I from Atlanta, my mom is a regional superintendent in one of the largest school districts in the state of Georgia. There is nothing underrepresented about me in this home field advantage. I can get a Black principal, counselor, or whoever I need to on the phone at any given point in time. So in early stages, it was really helpful because all these things that people have to do focus groups for and figure out like, yo, who do I talk to? Literally talk to my mom. My microphone is a little focused so you can't hear her, but she's literally in the next room doing whatever superintendents do right now. So early on, it wasn't that big of an issue, but as I scaled out to other places, especially when you're trying to do something that's holistic and that has a social impact, it's very clear that when you talk about social emotional learning, social emotional wellness, right now, a lot of people in the wellness space are like, well, when you feel angry, just pause for a moment and take 10 deep breaths, write down how you feel. And then weird enough, we're very open about the way that we feel about these things and how things like racism impact student mental health. I can't 10 deep breaths myself away from the fact that I just watched somebody get shot by a police officer and that it could legitimately happen to me tomorrow if I get caught in the wrong place. There's no 10 deep breaths I can take to separate from that. And when you walk into the office of a principal in Utah with that attitude, it gets turbulent sometimes. It's not always it's not always smooth. So for me as an underrepresented founder, what I've learned to do is identify regions and areas that aren't uphill battles for me. A decision that I made for myself, which I feel like I have a privilege to be able to make. Other people have to navigate things in different ways. Was that I was never going to limit who I was or what I believed was best for the kids that I wanted to serve just to appease somebody that's in a chair that makes a decision. And luckily, because of the regions, we do really well coastally. If you New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Carolinas, California, Washington State, they get it, they understand it. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to work there. And that's been my strategy for now.
Very good.
Tony, I think I know that Utah principal. He was tough on me too. No. Yeah. So one thing, and I don't know if this is as much related about education in particular, but something that was just tough for me over the years was just I had this nagging question, like when someone tells you no, whether it's a funder, a grant request, a RFP, whatever, when you hear no, and when you hear no without really any reasons behind it, I at least would question what am I missing here, right? I see, when I look at my background, when I look at my credentials, when I look at the what the product offering is, the research results, all that, this feels like a yes to me. And so there's always kind of that is it because they didn't believe that I could do it because of who I am, because I'm a Black entrepreneur, whatever that looks, and that kind of shows up in different ways. And so sometimes that would then have me try to overcompensate and go too far down the path of trying to kind of do the song and dance to appeal to folks. And so that was one thing that was hard. And then the other thing, I think generally, I'm looking at my notes here, we have I think finding a crew of people that you can go to, that you can really lean on, and that you can learn with. I found that it was hard. Even there are some things that my family and friends and people that I love and are great supports for me can't necessarily relate to some of the entrepreneurial struggles that I'm going through. And many of the people in the entrepreneurial community can't necessarily relate to some of those struggles that entrepreneurs of color go through. And so trying to find honestly, the four of us could get together, and I'm sure and that would be soul fulfilling. And so I found some of those pockets that have really helped me get through.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, now in this present time, I'm super grateful for a lot of the opportunities that are popping up, especially for female founders of color. Yesterday, I was on a pitch competition, specifically for female founders. And so for me, I definitely could see, founded this company in Missouri, and early on, just even trying to raise money and looking at who are the people we were approaching and who are all the people that were getting funded. And it did feel kind of hey, there was a club that you had to be in, and there really wasn't any founders of color that were in that club that were, of people who knew each other and were funding, and this person knows this person's uncle, and there was so much barriers, it felt like. But now I can say that's a lot of that is improving, and the opportunities are there a lot more. And just even for specifically what I'm building with Bottle Learning, we're in educational games, and just even trying to get people well, now it's a lot better because remote learning, they're seeing how important engagement is, and they're games, yes. Before, I used to be what word can I use without using the word games to talk to these teachers, but now they're fully embracing it. So yeah.
Yes, great, excellent point. I'm glad that you talked about the importance of remote work and how that's impacting your business, because I would love to know Has your business pivoted at all due to COVID? Like, what has been your experience getting over the COVID monster that everyone's going through right now?
I could take that one. So for us, we saw a lot of growth. Like I mentioned before, like 2019, talking to schools in the middle of the country, even in the coasts, and trying to explain to them like, hey, we are here to help engage your students. Engagement has always been an issue, you know, not just during this year for COVID. But there was always a little bit of hesitation, and it feels like, especially in ed tech, like things were moving really slow, and COVID kind of accelerated. Everybody knew like, okay, we need to push things further along and embrace technology. Otherwise, like this, you know, this is not going to work. And so for now we see like teachers and districts are seeing the importance of tools like Bottle, educational gamification. And we saw such an uptick, like thousands of teachers and parents as well, who are more involved in their kids' education now, just jumping on board on the website. So it's been great to kind of be able to serve thousands more users.
Yeah. Awesome. 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 Awesome.
I think in general, I won't necessarily say that we pivoted. I'll say I get to spend more time doing what I actually want to do. The remote part doesn't really impact us much. My team is scattered around the world, and we always have been. Some of us are in Nigeria, some of us are in Canada, Philippines, and even in the States, we're in like Georgia, DC, New York, Texas, Oregon. We're all over the place. That didn't really change anything for us. However, what it did do was shift the attitudes of a lot of people that were in our potential audience about where it was possible for learning to take place. I'll be very transparent with you and say that I'm an EdTech founder that hates EdTech. The education industry does not make enough money to give me as much headaches as it does. Like generally, if you look at EdTech and the yearly income into the EdTech industry, our industry is dwarfed by like every other aspect of tech. I've had so much more success and less headaches in MedTech and health tech talking about wellness than I ever have anything in EdTech. So even though I am EdTech, like I'm an EdTech organization, the pandemic gave me an opportunity to not have to deal with EdTech people. Because like I said, my mom's a superintendent. I was like, Mom, if I want to sell to a soup right now, what do I do? My mom's like, you don't, because I have 10 million other things to worry about. And unless I already got a contract with you, I'm not trying to sign another one. And if you come at me the wrong way right now, when I'm in the middle of this crisis, I'm not responding to you right now, and I'm not responding to you later. So honestly, don't email me. And I'm like, thanks, Mom. I can go do something else. So we end up working with a bunch of different organizations. The first thing that we did is we made a base amount of our content free. So we made like 400 pages worth of comics, lesson plans, curricula, and materials free, available to educators. Within the first month, we got like 50,000 new users, people popping up and using the platform, logging onto the platform, engaging in the platform. Those free users got us reach, and that reach allowed us to partner with other organizations. So now we're working with like Facebook, we're working with Instagram, and we're working with other large technology companies around their wellness initiatives and things like that. And the only way that happened is because we got the reach, because we decided to make it free. But if you talk to any ed tech investor right now, they'll go, freemium is there. We don't want to invest in freemium because how are you going to convert? But literally, I've gotten more business in the last 6 months than I have in the last 2 years doing what ed tech investors told me not to do. So take that with a grain of salt. I won't say anything else. I'm being recorded. I don't want to upset anyone. But yeah.
Yeah. A couple quick things here. I think for those of us whose work is within education and also has a very explicit equity lens, I think this pandemic has just shown shed even more of a light on how important that work is. And I think that it's going to be taken more seriously, and given hopefully more, more time and more resources in the coming years. I also think there's a shift that's happening, given that this was a crazy year for everyone, and the craziest year for schools in particular, right? And the ways that folks have had to shift the ways that they operate, be really nimble in adding new tools and new processes and all kinds of stuff. I think like education has historically been a very slow moving industry. And I think everyone talks about, oh, we move forward, a decade in 6 months and all that. And that is true. But I think the more important thing long term is that I don't necessarily see the the slope isn't going to go back to the glacial pace that it was before, right? It might not continue at this pace, but people are now more willing to experiment and to explore and to try new things. And so I'm hopeful that that's gonna remain.
Awesome. So, of course, you all have had awesome journeys to this point, and a lot of our listeners right now are in college and they have brilliant ideas. So what advice do you have for any of those collegiate entrepreneurs that may be listening and are just looking for like that one like word of wisdom to launch?
I can hop in with three quick things. One, I have this belief that like in the beginning, in the earliest of stages, all activity is good activity. And so there's almost like this like chaos theory or like randomness theory of entrepreneurship, where like if you don't go to ISTE, then you're not gonna bump into that person that Tony was mentioning, right? If you don't do this. And so I think that in the first couple of years for me, I was just like running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to figure it all out and trying to get as many people in my corner as possible, as many pilots as we could do and all that. And so I think that there is a time period when you want to pare down, and once you know what's successful and have a little bit more of that kind of product market fit, you can be focused. But in the early days, just like do it all. I mean, yeah, you basically do it all. That's one thing. Number two, pay yourself first. I waited way too long to start paying myself. And if this work isn't sustainable for ourselves as founders, then the company's not going to be sustainable, right? Like in order to win in 10 years, you need to like live 10 years to see that through. And so don't be shy about you should be the first one on payroll. And then my last one real quick is I did not do this. And if someone were to tell me this when I was starting out, I would have said, you don't know what you're talking about. Like be a little bit more realistic and don't overpromise and underdeliver. I wouldn't say underpromise, but promise and then overdeliver. I got out over my skis a handful of times where, I mean, we grew 3x every year for 5 years in a row, but I was telling people we're going to go 5x or 10x. And so then I felt like we weren't succeeding, right? And so reel it in just a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
I can go next. I have 4 things. The first one I already talked about, the team, because that's just so important. The second thing I would say, whatever you're looking to build, I would say get your end user involved from the get-go, whether it's the students or teachers, because you don't want to build something making assumptions that like teachers are going to love this without really taking it to teachers and saying, is this something that you would love? Like, how would you iterate in a way that would be beneficial to your end users? And the third thing I would say is to take advantage of like accelerator programs, grant competitions, like research that in the industry. EdTech, there might be some locally, like whatever city that you're in, look those up and make sure that you take advantage of them. Look at your university. Like I talked about in college, I had no idea what was available, but in grad school, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's all this stuff available, for students that are looking to, create ventures, and the funding is there. So definitely do your research there. And then the last thing I would say is to build relationships, not just, I know sometimes we're thinking about like, hey, I need to look for like the advisors or the person that can come and be my investor or whatever it is, but take advantage of building peer relationships. I met Tony, I don't know, 2017, maybe it was at South by Southwest. Yeah. We had a booth, and in my mind, I was thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I might, a principal might pass by or whatever. And Tony and I started having a conversation, and because of him, I found out about the AT&T Aspire Accelerator, which I didn't know about. We ended up getting into it the next year, and it's been like instrumental for Bottle. So honestly, shout out to Tony. So that's so important, like to build relationships, with your peers as you grow together.
Awesome.
I think that legitimately, if I didn't start my company when I was in college, I wouldn't have done it. Like starting an organization in college is one of the wisest things that you can do, in my opinion, because in a case like mine, where like I say that I was privileged in college in the sense that I only had to work one job. And I understand that it's different for a lot of people, that some people do have things other than their academics that they have to deal with. But for me, aside from my job and class, I had the most free time I have ever had in my life. And choosing to do all of the hard foundational work of starting the company then, when I didn't have bills, when there was a roof over my head already, when a failure or me not converting something didn't mean me not having money for food, perfect time to do it. I agree with Edna's advice 100%. Focus on, there's so much money for college students. Legitimately, by the time I walked across the stage to get my degree, we had already raised like $115,000. Or organizationally, just off of entrepreneurship thing here. The business school is doing a thing here. Like, look at what's happening at your school and look at what's happening in your region. Like in North Carolina, there's a series of things that happen called the Triple Impact Challenge that happens across different university campuses. We won business stuff so many times, the business majors stopped telling me about things, which personally made me feel great to be an acting major, beating business majors at their own game. Still one of my life's greatest accomplishments. But there's so much capital available for college students. When I like, most of my tips are around capital, because my opinion is this: you can make as many mistakes as you want if you got the money to sustain it. There are some companies that exist today just because they were allowed to try, fail, and the money kept rolling and kept rolling and kept rolling until they finally got it right. And I'm sure those people don't feel imposter syndrome and totally think that they hard work their way to the top of whatever industry they were in, when it's actually that they just had money to back up all the smack that they were talking. So for me, I'm always looking at capital. When you need to look at whatever the unique things about your organization are and identify ways to build capital based on that. Edna brought up stuff around female founders of color. If you're a founder of color, if you're a woman, if you're a part of any minority group in general, I guarantee you there is some venture, firm, competition, or initiative somewhere that's going to allow you to get your foot in the door. And even if it's not something that's uniquely capital related, there are groups that you can join and people that you can talk to so that you can build those allyships. The way that I looked at it when I was in college was, if I don't get this to a point where I can feed myself before I walk across the stage, I'm going to do something else. And putting that pressure on myself is what made me make those distinct decisions. When you're a college student, you can hit up like a professor or something, even if they're at a completely different university. I emailed a professor at NYU one time because I was going to be in town for something. And I said, hey, can I stop by during your office hours and just ask you some questions? As far as she's concerned, she's like, he's a student. I don't care. I guess he's one of my students now. Come by and talk. When you're a college student, everybody's willing to help. Everybody wants to give you advice. Take advantage of it.
Awesome. And I'm definitely going to dive into Q&A, but before we do that, because I know y'all are some ambitious folks, what are some of your goals as a founder for 2021?
Yeah, so I haven't talked much about this new organization that I started called Gift Card Bank. I've learned so much about like the social safety net in the last 6 months, and how kind of antiquated it is and how many gaps there are in it. And so with Gift Card Bank, we hope to kind of fill some of those gaps. And so we've been around for only 6.5 months or so, but we're working with Kroger, CVS, Albertsons, Feed in America, a handful of big fintech companies. And so I said I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and so I won't put my real internal number out there. But now we have this platform that really works, and so we want to scale it to millions of dollars of gift cards to people in need next year. We know that this pandemic is, like everything in the country, not evenly distributed, and affecting Black communities both from a health standpoint and also financially, where folks are losing their jobs and losing work, and so really energized to scale this. And then the other thing, I'm now a board member of LearnFresh, the first company I started, and I would say that I'm learning how to be a good board member, and it's very different than being a good founder. And so one of my goals is to just continue to improve as a board member in the next year.
Awesome.
I want an animated series for the Uncommons. That's what I want. Wholeheartedly, I think that education happens outside of the classroom. And if there's anything that distance learning has taught us, it's that kids can learn from anywhere and that they are learning all the time. And I think that a very large place for innovation and growth in the education industry is them accepting the fact that as much as we want kids to pay attention during the 8 hours a day that they're chilling in the classroom, the time that they're spending on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, playing video games and Roblox and Fortnite lobbies are probably going to impact who they are as a person more than anything you write on that whiteboard. So if you want to remain relevant, there must be some way to weave the lessons that we want them to learn into the places where they are voluntarily spending their time. And that is the type of innovation that we want to pioneer at Weird Enough through original media content.
Great.
For us, we've seen a lot of growth. Like this year, we've gone up to 50,000 plus student signups. And for 2021, we just want to increase that even more considerably. We're focusing on K-6 math right now, but a goal of ours, the way we built our platform is so we can take any type of content and deliver it through Bottle. So looking to partner with a content provider, whether it's English or Spanish or whatever content it may be, and deliver that through Bottle. And then a big thing for us is accessibility. So we spent a lot of time this year like optimizing our game so it'll work on the slowest Chromebooks that's used in like an inner city school where, you know, Chromebooks is being just doesn't have the capability to run like, you know, high-end games. And so big part of that as well is releasing a mobile version next year as well.
All right. All right. Early congrats on accomplishing all of those things. I know y'all are going to make it happen. I want to go and dive into some of these awesome questions that I see here in Q&A. The first question I'm going to pull is from Arnold. And I don't know, Edna, you might be the best person for this, but let's see. What's your advice to independent tutors? How can they be innovative in this pandemic, given that most of the learning is now online?
That's a good question. So actually, I just had a call today with a tutor in Brooklyn, New York, and she was using Bottle to tutor her classroom. I think there are interesting ways to do it depending on who you're tutoring, if it's like college tutoring versus the kids. I know for her kids, she would do like collaborative work and used it. Like we built Bottle to be a one-on-one, like one-on-one product device per kid, but she's using it collaboratively, and her students will kind of walk her through like, hey, this will be the answer to the question, and they work through it together. So I think there are interesting ways that tutors are kind of being innovative in this time when all you have is Zoom and you have to get your students all on Zoom. One thing that we did too is fun, like, again, it depends on what age range that you're tutoring, but fun like icebreakers in the beginning of the tutoring sessions that we sent out to all our teachers, like, hey, you could use these for your students before class session on Zoom.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. And then to close, because I know in the first panel, we talked about the importance of B2B as opposed to B2C. So how did you initially reach out to those schools and educational groups to grow your experience and build your business?
I can start this one as well. So when we first started out, we started the company in Kansas City, Missouri. It was literally going to the closest elementary school that was near to us, Gordon Park Elementary School, and saying, hey, we have this thing, this product, barely a product back then, but want to see like, what do you teachers think about it? And really, they're the ones who came alongside us. And as we kept building, we kept showing them like an iteration and saying, hey, do you think this would work? And then from there, once we had a full product, we did, somebody in the other panel mentioned it, like we offered it to them to say, hey, this semester, we would love to have you jump on a pilot for free and really give us your feedback on it once we launched. And then from there, again, education, like Tony said, is all about relationships. So you really have to make those connections and say, hey, who do you know? Like have whatever school piloted it, refer you to another school that they know. Also look outside of just the districts, because it's so hard to get into school districts, but like after school programs, a lot of them are not being, sought after, but there's a huge need in after school programs for tools or learning centers, or even now they're like learning pods or homeschool pods that are up because of COVID. And so there's a lot of different avenues that you could take.
Go ahead, Khalil, I'm sorry.
I agree with all that. I think to codify it a little bit, I'd print 4 words: beg, learn, data, momentum is like the way that I'd frame it, right? It's like the first couple of educators, first couple of whatever your unit that matters is, like they're going to be taking a bet on you more than they are on this product that's brand new that you don't know, that they don't know anything about. And then truly learning, getting improving it. But I think that people don't think as much about the data side and the research side as early as they should. Like if you have 10 teachers that are using something, ask all 10 of them a question, and then then you could say 9 out of 10 teachers say that they thought their students improved in X, Y, and Z through using this, right? It doesn't have to be a RCT third-party research study for it to like help you gain that momentum. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what those data points were really early, and then kind of like momentum breeds momentum. Everyone in education, as Tony said, the best product doesn't always win, but there is kind of this peer effect where you say, oh, if it's good enough for Detroit Public Schools and Oakland Unified School District, it's probably good enough for blank, right? And so that happens.
Awesome. Tony, we're going to wrap really quickly with you, and then one final question.
If we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, I tell you to pay attention to local education conferences happening in your community and go hang out in the unofficial conferences places. So like if a hotel is hosting an education conference, usually you don't need a badge to be in the lobby. Go hang out in the lobby. You'll meet some people. They always have happy hours. Educators love their happy hours. ISTE karaoke is lit every year. I'm telling you, they love their happy hours. Find those places if you can't go to the actual conference. Today, I'd say social media. A lot of educators don't particularly know this much, but they literally isolate themselves into ed chats. Like there are so many principal ed chat, literature teacher ed chat, youth librarian ed chat, and they meet up and they talk. And obviously you can't pop up and start selling right away, but these communities are there for you to talk to, join in, become a part of, establish real connections, and then you can move things from there. The Twitter chats are game changers when you're first starting.
Thank you all so much for sharing all of your insight and all your great laughs and jokes. It's been a blast. What is the best way for our viewers to connect with you following this roundtable discussion so we can continue having some of these conversations offline?
Yeah, I just put my email in the chat, but I realized it was just to the panelists. Also, I'm going to put it to everyone right now. I'm also right now, I'm a fellow at Reach Capital, which is like one of the top tier education venture capital firms. And so like, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you if I can within reach, or just kind of like navigate the fundraising waters and all of that. I know it feels daunting sometimes just lob in that cold email to a VC. And so would love to help. I'll put my email in the chat right now.
Thank you.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and leave my email and LinkedIn in the chat as well.
Cool. All right. Thank y'all so much. I can't tell you how inspirational this has been. I know that our viewers took a lot from it, and these are things I wish I had known as an early founder in the EdTech space. So you all are blazing a path, and I will follow along with you. So thanks so much for your time. Thank you, viewers. This has been absolutely phenomenal.
Amazing. Thank you, Candace. And just, closing it out and to tease our next event, we're going to take some time off for Thanksgiving. Hope everybody has a chance to safely spend some time with some friends and family. Then we'll pick it back up on December 3rd when we'll tackle digital health. Tony had already talked about how there's a lot of overlap between education and wellness, and so we'll dig into a conversation there. But thank you everyone for joining. This was amazing. I have a big smile on my face. I'm so happy with all of the panelists and everything that was contributed. And please, if the students and the alums that are in the program, be sure to take advantage of all of the amazing people that were on the panel. Reach out to them over LinkedIn and via Slack and otherwise. So thank you everyone for joining. Look forward to catching up again in a couple weeks. Take care.